Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to this afternoon session. We are getting started with our presentation. Bienvenidos a todos. Ya vamos a empezar nuestra sesión. Welcome, local district central families, to the We Stand Together Asian American Voices for our Chinese Community Town Hall. Familias del Distrito Local Central, les damos una cordial bienvenida a este foro comunitario para la sesión llamada Nos Mantenemos Unidos, Voces Asiáticas, Americanas, dedicada con un enfoque a la comunidad china. Before starting, I'd like to inform you that this town hall will be presented in English, Chinese, and Spanish. To listen to this presentation in Spanish or Chinese Mandarin, you would need to click on the language option on the world icon you see on your screen and will select the language that you would like to hear this presentation. Antes de comenzar, les informamos que este foro será presentado en inglés y tendremos traducción simultánea en español y en chino, en mandarín. Para escuchar en el idioma de su preferencia, puede ver al inferior de la pantalla el símbolo del mundo y va a escoger el idioma que prefiera. During this virtual town hall session, you will have an opportunity to ask questions of our panelists during the presentation. On your screen, you will see a Q&A icon and can type in your questions. At the conclusion of this presentation, we will have our panelists respond to as many questions that we can as time permits. Also, this session is being played live on YouTube. I'll drop the link in a moment. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Gauto from our local district central's school mental health unit. Ms. Gauto.
Thank you, Ms. Araguin. Good evening, everybody. My name is Anne-Marie Gauto. I'm a specialist with school mental health in local district central. I just want to inform you all of our student and family wellness hotline, where our families can receive supports for mental health resources and other basic needs. And additionally, we have our mental health hotlines that are available to anybody. They're 24/7, and that's the LA County Department of Mental Health, 1-800-854-7771, or you can text 741-741. But I do want to let everybody know that our student and family wellness hotline will be available during the summer as well. And they will be available weekdays, Monday through Friday, from 8 to 5 p.m. We know that this year has been quite challenging for a lot of us, and sometimes our regular coping skills don't always support us the way we need. So we do ask that you reach out to the Student and Family Wellness Hotline or the LA County Department of Mental Health if you need additional supports. It's okay to ask for help. So thank you very much. I'm excited to hear the program today, and pleasure being here as always. And I will pass it over to Mr. Andre Spicer.
Good evening and thank you. Good evening, Local District Central families, students, and community members. It's my pleasure to welcome you tonight to our We Stand Together Asian American Voices Town Hall discussion with an emphasis on the Chinese American community. I'm Andre Spicer. I'm one of your administrators of instruction from Local District Central. My counterpart, Mrs. Julie Gonzalez, and I are proud to serve you and your children. Tonight, it's our objective to highlight the historical experiences of Chinese American communities within Los Angeles and beyond. We would also like to show our support and stand with the Asian community as allies, because we truly believe, in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Currently, we're experiencing the disgusting and alarming rise in abuse and racist acts of violence that has permeated throughout our society, targeted against our Asian American citizens. And we know that this has negatively impacted or affected our students, as many of them feel fear and discomfort for just being who they are. In Local District Central, we take pride in embracing the cultural assets and gifts of every culture. We believe that that is what makes us stronger. That's why we are the home of the champions. Please know that we stand with you as allies, and we will not stand for any discrimination within our boundaries, any hatred or racism. We are one. So thank you again for joining us tonight. Now, I would like to introduce Ms. Veronica Herrera, Director of Transformation. But before Ms. Herrera comes on, you can see our agenda there. Tonight, we have an absolutely spectacular program for you. Asian American Pacific Islander Experience, the Chinese American Story by the UCLA Asian Studies Center. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Mr. Spicer. And we in Local District Central practice our wellness theme. And today it is Gratitude Tuesday, and we are grateful that you are joining us this evening for this very special discussion on Chinese American history. Next slide, please. But before we begin, this is just a gentle reminder of our Zoom norms. We ask that you please mute yourself throughout the session. And we ask that you please place your questions in the chat. And also please be patient with our technology. Presume positive intentions throughout this session. And please place your emoji reaction symbols in the chat. And we ask that you please be present. Next slide. Also, we in Local District Central, the home of the champions, we are always working together. And these are our 7 norms of collaboration. We ask that you pose questions, that you pause, that you presume positive intentions, that you bring and put ideas on the table. Also, that you pay attention to self and others, provide data, and paraphrasing. And we ask that you please select one for this evening for your self-reflection. Thank you. Next slide, please. We also follow our triple track agenda. What you learn here today, you take back and you share with others. And more importantly, not only do you share with others, but you take back to your school communities. Thank you very much. And now it is my pleasure to pass it over to our wonderful Administrator of Instruction, Mr. Andre Spicer.
Thank you, Mrs. Herrera. Thank you so much. Well, we always want to remind ourselves of what our instructional foci is here in Local District Central. We base everything on rigorous grade level standards learning. We want to ensure that all of our students are receiving culturally responsive learning strategies that are fun and engaging, that prepare them to graduate. Everyone from the class of 2021, which we are so excited about them graduating and culminating here soon in the next few days, all the way to our little ones in 2032, or should I say the class of 2032. As always, also, our lens is equity, or our equity lens is how we want to make sure that we embrace our families, how we embrace our communities, how we look at our data. Black Students Matter, we see, we hear you, was our big equity initiative this year. But we're always looking at our work through an equity lens by focusing on those students at the margin. Our English learners, those students who are acquiring English, whether they be international students or whether they be homegrown. Our students that happen to have IEPs. Our students that have been identified as gifted. Our students that identify with the gender outside of what they were assigned at birth. And of course, anyone who is unheard. We are here for those students. And finally, a universal design for learning to ensure that all of our students have access to the curriculum and a safe and nurturing environment where they can take full advantage of the opportunities in local district central. Next slide. So now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you our local district superintendent. Mrs. Baez has dedicated herself to the issues of social justice and equity, and she does it with integrity. Here in Local District Central, under her leadership, we've grounded our work in the equity lens that I just mentioned to you, and we're pushing to ensure that every student has the opportunity to excel. It was her idea, her calling to ensure that we have this town hall series to honor our Asian American families and communities, most importantly, so they can benefit our students. Please welcome our superintendent, Mrs. Frances Baez. Mrs. Baez, good evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spicer. I really appreciate your leadership, your introduction, the context, and all the preparations that went through today's town hall. Good evening to Local District Central. My name is Frances Baez, Superintendent in Local District Central, the home of the champions. I want to thank you for being with us today to learn about our Asian American community. And today we are featuring our Chinese American brothers and sisters. We will learn about their historical contributions, their equity journey, and ways that we can be allies. And I want to begin by stating that we are against acts of hate and violence targeted towards our Asian American and Pacific Islander community, or any population or any one of our brothers and sisters. And I thank Mr. Spicer and Dr. Bianchi Tayama and our school communities for preparing this final series of our Asian American community. And also to our guest speaker, Dr. Umemoto from the UCLA Asian Studies, and the panelists who are joining us today to share their expert voices. We are recording this live so that it is available on YouTube for our students. We are sharing it in advisory for our students to learn about our Asian American population and all of our town halls that we've held this year for our Black Students Matter initiative. Without further ado, I just want to call attention to the leaders on the slide. These are the board members that create the culture and climate to make these forums possible. So today I want to begin by introducing one of our board members who is an equity warrior and also social justice warrior. Please join me in welcoming board member Monica Garcia, representing Board District 2. Board member Garcia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Superintendent Baez. Hello, Local District Central. You are indeed all champions. I am honored to support and celebrate this work. And I just feel like LA Unified, through the work of Local District Central, is modeling that learning brings light, learning brings us all together. And as a community, we must say we are one. So I join you to celebrate our Asian communities, in particular today, our Chinese community. Number two, I want to also add my voice that acts of violence and hate are wrong, period. We cannot allow these to happen and be silent. So we stand in solidarity against the hatred that is being targeted to our Asian American community. Lastly, we know the power of story, we know the power of self, and we know the power of learning. So I am inspired constantly by all of you who come together to build voice so that our class of 2021 and our class of 32 or 33 in our kindergarten know that we love them, believe in them, and have high expectations. Thank you so much for letting me be part of this important town hall. And I look forward to our community reflecting light and love as you normally do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Board Member Garcia. And now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce another one of our board members who supports these initiatives, these efforts, and establishes a positive climate and culture for us to be able to have these town halls featuring our Asian American populations. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Board Member Jackie Goldberg, representing Board District 5. Thank you very much for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate, Dr. Baez, all of these various seminars that you've had with the Asian Pacific Island community. Sometimes a group that gets lost in the old-fashioned racist ideology of the so-called perfect minority or model minority. And that's all the kinds of things that racism can do to people. Mostly, I want to say to all of you who have come to this meeting, thank you for joining this. Thanks for being a part of an ongoing effort of Local District Central in saying that it is time that A, we learn more about each other, and that B, that when we say that we are one, this pin that we all wear, that we mean it. That we mean it. And that means that we're going to speak up for each other. That means that if you witness somebody who calls it Wuhan virus, you say, nonsense, nonsense. The virus is the virus. It doesn't matter. What are you trying to make this into a racist thing where the whole world's infected? We're all dealing with it. If you hear people calling people names, if you hear people making funny expressions with their eyes and think that that's cute, it's time to speak up and say that's racist. That's not funny. I don't like it. Don't do it around me. It's just wrong. If you think you're making me laugh, I'm not laughing. That's a way we can support each other. And it's important that we support each other. We should not need to have each community have to, quote, look out for itself. We need to all look out for each other. And I think if this virus did nothing else, it certainly proved the need to do that. Let me close by saying thank you to parents. You folks have been remarkable. We kept your kids at home all year. You didn't have an easy time. Some of you were working at home too, if you were lucky enough to have a job that let you do that. But what a mess it was to have all the kids and you try to be online at the same time. And all of the things that the kids didn't get to do and all of the things they missed, you parents helped hold them together. So I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank the 5th graders, the 6th graders, and the 8th graders who are culminating and who next year will start new schools. This is a beginning, not an end. This is a time for new exploration. And to the class, the graduating seniors, well, I think they're going to make movies about you guys. Because my goodness, what a year you've had. Not like any other senior class ever will have again, I hope. And that means that you're very unique. Congratulations to all of you for graduating from high school in spite of all the things that were thrown at you this year. And thank you to all the teachers, administrators, COSA staff, LDCs. You provided the support to help all of us, and I say us because it included me too, get through a very, very difficult year. Congratulations to all, and now let's hear more about our brothers and sisters, Chinese Americans. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Board Member Goldberg. Thank you for your inspirational words. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Board Member Tanya Ortiz-Franklin, representing Board District 7. Thank you for joining us and supporting and creating this culture climate to have these forums today. The floor is yours, Board Member.
I just wanted to say hello and thank you to everyone for making space to stand in solidarity with our diverse, beautiful community across Los Angeles Unified. Looking forward to the conversation, looking forward to being advocates and partners and allies and co-conspirators for a future of LA Unified that is anti-racist, that is equitable in heart, in body, and soul. Thank you for your leadership, Local District Central. Let's get into the good convo tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'll hand it back over to Mr. Spicer.
Thank you, and thank you to our board members. Inspiring as always, inspiring as always. Thank you so much for your leadership. Now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce one of our Community of Schools administrators who will introduce our distinguished panel today. I want to welcome Dr. Kitayama from the Koreatown Pico Union Community of Schools. And I want to publicly thank Dr. Kitayama before we get started for her dedication and her passion to this project. Without her, it would have just been impossible for this four-part series, excuse me. Dr. K, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Spicer. Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome all of you to our great presentation tonight. It is really my pleasure and honor to introduce someone very, very special. She's been our family friend for many years, and I got to work on a project together, and what an inspiring experience that has been. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Karen Umemoto. She's currently a director of the UCLA Asian American Studies Center, and she's also professor of urban planning and Asian American Studies at UCLA. She received her master's degree in Asian American Studies from UCLA, and she got her PhD in urban studies from MIT. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce Dr. Umemoto. Dr. Umemoto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chia, and thanks to all of you here listening in, and to everyone who helped organize and introduce the program today. I'm particularly excited because we're going to unveil a new digital storybook that's going to be free and available to the public, to all teachers and students and anyone, to learn a little bit more about the experience that people have gone through under this latest wave of anti-Asian hatred, and to become more sensitive to each other as we have endured such a difficult time during the pandemic, and then we call it the shadow pandemic of anti-Asian hate. So I want to just introduce the wonderful team that we have. And we're going to start with Stan Yogi. He's the writer of the story, who's taken the lead on authorship lead in collaboration and in conversation with the rest of the team. We also have our web designer, Daniel Kim, who will give a short tour of the website, and our researcher, Joanne Luong, who will take us on a deeper dive into some of the storybook links that have more of the historical background related to the story. Then we'll hear from our illustrious illustrator, Angel Trazo, who will also tell us a little bit about the coloring book for younger readers. And then Chie Yun Kitayama will let you know more about the lesson plans that are also on the website. And biographical information for all of us can be found in the About section of the website. Let me start by showing you this quick graph. So I teach in Asian American Studies and Urban Planning. One of my colleagues in public health was part of a study, and they looked at the spread of anti-Asian sentiment in the internet. And they looked at all the tweets, over 1 million tweets, the week before and the week after the former President Trump used the word Chinese virus. And if you look at the graph, you could see how the utterance of the word Chinese virus led to a huge uptick in the use of the hashtag Chinese virus. And in those hashtags, they analyzed them using artificial intelligence tools, and found that over about half of them contained explicit anti-Chinese and anti-Asian sentiment. So part of the reason why we created this storybook, it was purely an experiment that we were happy with, that we're going to continue to develop, hopefully in series form, was to try to kind of combat the winds of hatred that we've seen over the past year or so. Next slide, please. So this is the order of the program, and I'm just gonna, without further ado, hand it over to Stan Yogi, who's going to start us off with an actual reading of the storybook. Now, this storybook is about a young girl and her experience with anti-Asian racism, and you'll see how she handles the situation and what we can learn from her experience. So, Stan.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you all with LAUSD for inviting us to join you today. And thank you all who are part of this webinar for taking the time to be with us. I'm going to read the Vanessa Unmuted story, which is the basis for this curriculum. So if we can scroll down, you see here the main characters. Okay, so I'll just start. Vanessa Chin was a little grumpy and sleepy. She had just finished eating lunch with her parents and younger brother, Jordan. She didn't want to log back onto Zoom for the final session of her school day. It was the second day back in her 5th grade class after a boring winter break. She had begged her parents to let her visit her best friend, Hilda Flores. Please, 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 Vanessa pleaded. We'll wear masks the whole time. But her mother told her, sorry, sweetie, COVID is spreading like wildfire. You can't visit Hilda yet, but you can play in the backyard or living room with Jordan. Vanessa didn't want to play with her brother. He was 2 years younger than her. He'd rather play Roblox on his computer. She wanted to scroll through Instagram or build something on Minecraft with Hilda. Unlike some of her other classmates, Vanessa had her own computer and good internet connection. So she spent a lot of time playing Minecraft with Hilda. That made the days during the 3-week school break bearable. Vanessa was disappointed that her Jima and Papa, her mother's parents, didn't throw their big New Year's Day party as they did every year. She missed filling her plate with her grandmother's creamy macaroni and cheese, crispy catfish, fluffy cornbread, and smoky black-eyed peas. She especially liked her Jima's sweet potato pie. Vanessa missed her Papa's bear hugs. She missed walking around her grandparents' Leimert Park neighborhood with her Uncle Dwayne. He would tell her stories about when he and Vanessa's mother were growing up. Remembering her grandparents' New Year's Day celebration made Vanessa smile. Her smile widened when she remembered something else. In a few weeks, her grandparents on her father's side would celebrate the Lunar New Year. Before COVID, they celebrated by going with her family to a busy restaurant in Rosemead, where they met up with Vanessa's grandparents, uncles, aunts, and cousins for a huge dinner. They sat at big round tables. Waiters wearing white shirts and black vests set gigantic platters of food in the center of each table. Large steamed fish, thick, chewy noodles, salty chicken, and her favorite, dumplings filled with shrimp. Here you can see the lovely illustrations that Angel did. Grandpa and Grandma Chin always seemed to be laughing during those dinners, their eyes crinkled in big grins. In the middle of dinner, Grandpa Chin tapped a fork on his glass to get his family's attention. I'm a very lucky man. I have a wonderful family. Thank you for celebrating the New Year with me, he said, looking at his children and grandchildren seated around 4 tables. He lifted his glass and made a toast. May the new year be healthy and prosperous for us all. Happy New Year. Vanessa would click her glass filled with lemon lime soda against her parents' and brothers' glasses. Happy New Year, they shouted to each other. They would have to skip the fancy dinner this year because of COVID. But last night on a Zoom call, her grandparents told Vanessa and Jordan to look for red envelopes in the mail. That excited Vanessa. She knew those envelopes would be filled with money. What would she do with her New Year's money this time? Vanessa was starting to think about what she would buy with her New Year's money when she heard her teacher, Mrs. Garabedian, say, Vanessa, please turn on your video. Mrs. Garabedian was checking who was in the Zoom classroom after lunch. Mrs. Garabedian shared her computer screen and showed the class an electronic book. It was called Horton Hears a Who. On the cover was an illustration of an elephant looking surprised. Mrs. Garabedian explained that she would read the book aloud this afternoon. She would finish reading the book the next day when the class would split into groups to talk about it. She started reading. Soon after Mrs. Garabedian started reading, Vanessa received a text from her classmate, Oscar Martin. Oscar wrote, Look at this Instagram post. Vanessa clicked on the link. An image popped up on her phone. It was a photo someone had taken of her smiling on the school playground a year earlier. But over her picture, someone had drawn buck teeth and slanted lines for eyes. The caption read, "COVID chin. I hope she gets the Kung flu." Below the picture, she saw that several of her classmates had commented, "Yuck, is she infected? Ooh, gross. She needs to go back where she came from. Take the Chinese virus with you." "This is a good one, Oscar," said one of her classmates had written. Vanessa was confused. She had known Oscar since the first grade when they were in the same class. They said hi to each other on the playground, and sometimes he joined in Minecraft games with her. But this school year, they hadn't seen each other in person because of COVID. The Instagram account was called COVID Chin. Could Oscar have put it up? Vanessa texted back, "What is this?" Oscar replied, "Your last name's Chin. That's a Chinese name. It's because of Chinese like you that people are getting sick and dying with COVID." Vanessa felt her stomach tighten and her face got hot. She wrote back, "I don't have COVID, and no one in my family does." Oscar quickly responded, "You're Chinese. Chinese brought the virus here." Vanessa didn't know what to say or do. She had heard that COVID started in China, but she had never been to China. Her father and grandparents had never been to China. Vanessa's father had once explained that her great-great-grandparents had come to the United States from China. That was a long, long time ago. Vanessa couldn't concentrate on what Mrs. Garabedian was reading. She was glad when the school day ended. Just before leaving the Zoom schoolroom, Vanessa's phone pinged. Her heart raced. It might be another text from Oscar. She was relieved when she saw a message from her best friend, Hilda. Hilda wrote, "Want to play Minecraft or Roblox in a few minutes?" Vanessa usually played video games with Hilda after school, but she didn't feel like playing this afternoon. She wrote back to Hilda, "No, I have to help my mom do something." Vanessa lay down on her bed, stared at the ceiling, and twirled her wavy black hair. She wondered, did Oscar create the Instagram account against me? Why would he do that? Why would my classmates blame me for COVID? Aren't they my friends? Vanessa got sadder and angrier the more she thought about the Instagram post. Vanessa wasn't hungry at dinner. She pushed the spaghetti around her plate more than she needed. Vanessa helped her parents clear the table while Jordan finished his dessert. "You didn't eat much, honey. Are you okay?" Vanessa's mother asked her as she loaded the dishwasher. Vanessa told her parents about the Instagram post. Her mother and father looked at her sadly. Vanessa's dad rubbed the back of her head and steered her to the living room. "Let's talk," he said. "You come too," her father said to Jordan. Vanessa sat between her parents on the couch. "We're glad that you told us about the post and what Oscar wrote and how it made you feel. It was very, very wrong for someone to put up that post and for Oscar to blame you," her father said. "It's not Chinese people's fault that the virus started there. It's no one's fault. But some people want to place blame, even if it's not fair." Vanessa's father continued. "When I was a little kid, I overheard my parents talk with an uncle and aunt about a man named Vincent Chin. My ears perked up because I heard our last name, Chin. I thought he might be a relative. My uncle said that Vincent Chin had been beaten to death. I remember feeling scared and confused because I didn't understand why Vincent Chin died. It wasn't until I was in college that I learned that Vincent Chin was killed in Detroit by 2 auto workers who thought he was Japanese. They blamed Japan for losing their jobs because Japanese car companies were successful. That's why they attacked Vincent Chin. I realized then that even though my family had been in America for 5 generations, people still saw Asian Americans like me as foreign. There have been other times when people have blamed Asian Americans for things they didn't do." Vanessa thought about Vincent Chin and how the auto workers blamed him for something he had nothing to do with. Rubbing Vanessa's back, her mother said, "I know it's hard, honey, when people judge you because of your skin color. When I was in middle school, police here in LA severely beat up a Black man named Rodney King. Even though the beating was videotaped, The police officers weren't punished. At that time, your Uncle Dwayne was about your age. My parents sat us down and told us we had to be extra careful whenever we saw police officers because they would assume we were up to no good. Dwayne and I knew that wasn't fair, but we took their advice. Vanessa remembered walking to the store with her gentle and kind Uncle Dwayne and noticing women approaching them clutch their purses to their sides and look suspiciously at him. Is what happened to George Floyd like what happened to Rodney King? Vanessa asked. Her parents nodded. But after George Floyd died, many people of all races and ages protested his killing. That's different from the reaction to what happened to Rodney King, Vanessa's mother explained. Since you're Black and Asian, you'll meet people like Oscar who can't see beyond your skin color, Vanessa's father added. He looked at both Vanessa and her brother. Then he looked at Vanessa and asked, would you like us to talk with Mrs. Garabedian about the Instagram post and what's happening with Oscar? Vanessa thought about it and shook her head. Not yet, she said. I'll let you know if I do. Vanessa's mom and dad hugged her. We're here if you want to talk, said Vanessa's dad. Vanessa felt nervous but excited about what her parents told her. She wanted to talk with Hilda. After telling Hilda about the Instagram post and what Oscar wrote, Hilda said, wait a minute, I'm going to look for that post. Vanessa waited. After a while, Hilda said, I wrote a comment that post was messed up, that you're my best friend, and that you don't have COVID. Thanks, Vanessa said, relieved that someone was defending her. Do you think Oscar put up that post? Maybe, answered Hilda. When I transferred to our school 2 years ago, he called me Dora the Explorer. Why would you do that? Vanessa asked. Who knows, Hilda said. I guess it's because Dora the Explorer is Latina like me, even though I look nothing like Dora. So what did you do? Vanessa asked. I told Oscar my name is Hilda, not Dora, and to call me by my name. He never called me Dora again, Hilda explained. That was brave, said Vanessa. I was just mad. My parents always tell my brothers and me to stand up for ourselves. My mother told me that when she was in high school, she protested against a law that would have made her teachers report that she was undocumented. And my dad told me that when he was in college, he marched with thousands of other people in downtown LA for immigrants, even though his family had lived in California for generations. The next afternoon, Mrs. Garabedian finished reading Horton Hears a Who. She then said, okay, now I'm going to put you all in breakout rooms. I want each of you to talk about what Horton means when he says that a person is a person no matter how small. Vanessa was happy to see Hilda's face pop up on her screen. Her classmate Sam joined the group. Then her heart sank when she saw Oscar's face. Oh no, why do I have to be in the same group as Vanessa? I don't want to get COVID, Oscar groaned. Why do you think you'll get COVID from her? Hilda asked. Because she's Chinese. COVID is from China. That's messed up, Oscar, Hilda said. Vanessa's not from China. She's American, like all of us. She doesn't have COVID. My grandmother got COVID and had to go to the hospital, Oscar shared. My dad said she got it because Chinese people shop at the store where my grandma worked. He said COVID is from China and that Chinese people need to go back to where they came from. Vanessa is from LA, like you and me, Oscar. How is your grandma? Is she out of the hospital? She died, Oscar said. That is so sad, Oscar, said Hilda. But it's not Vanessa's fault. It's not her family's fault. It's not Chinese people's fault. It's not anyone's fault. Oscar turned off his video and didn't say anything for the rest of the small group session. After school, Vanessa texted Hilda. Thanks for sticking up for me. Hey, we're best friends, right? That's what best friends do, Hilda texted back with a happy face emoji. While eating breakfast the next morning, Vanessa's dad said, guess what? Tomorrow, we're all going to Koreatown for a march against anti-Asian hate. Vanessa was excited. She had never been to a demonstration before. She'd only seen pictures and videos of protests on television and online. Can I invite Hilda? Vanessa excitedly asked her parents. Of course, her mother responded. After breakfast, Vanessa texted Hilda. Tomorrow, me and my family are going to Koreatown for a protest against anti-Asian hate. Want to come? Hilda immediately texted back. Yes, Can I ask my family to go too? Vanessa texted back, yes. The next morning, Vanessa and her family met Hilda and her family on a street corner in Koreatown. Vanessa and Hilda hadn't seen each other in person for months. They hugged each other tightly. Vanessa's father fist bumped Hilda's father. The night before, Vanessa and her family made signs to carry at the march. Vanessa said, "We belong here. Hashtag stop Asian hate." Hilda and her family brought signs too. Hilda's read, "Love, unity, solidarity." "Wait a minute, girls," Vanessa's mother said. She took her phone from her backpack and asked Vanessa and Hilda to pose with their signs. Vanessa asked her mom to text her the photo. Vanessa and Hilda walked with hundreds of other protesters carrying signs and chanting through their masks, "Enough is enough." Before dinner that night, Vanessa heard her phone ping. It was a text from Hilda. "Look at your Instagram account." Vanessa tapped the icon and saw the picture she had posted from the rally. Underneath, she saw several of her classmates had liked it, including Oscar. He commented, "Cool, you did this." While she was on Instagram, she checked for the account she thought Oscar had created, the one that blamed her for COVID. It was gone. The following school day, Mrs. Garabedian told Vanessa's class to continue talking about Horton Hears a Who. She put students into the same Zoom breakout rooms that they had been in a few days earlier. Vanessa saw the faces of Hilda, Sam, and Oscar pop up on her computer screen. "Thanks for liking my Instagram post, Oscar," Vanessa said. "Sure," Oscar replied. "What post are you talking about?" Sam asked. "On Saturday morning, Hilda and I marched in a demonstration against anti-Asian hate," Vanessa explained. "It was awesome," Hilda added. Vanessa felt butterflies in her stomach because she was a little nervous about what she was about to ask Oscar. But she went ahead and asked, "Oscar, last week you blamed me for COVID, but you liked my Instagram post. Why?" Oscar thought for a moment. Then he said, "On Saturday, I met my grandpa at the cemetery where my grandma is buried. My parents went to get water for the flowers. I told my grandpa that my dad said my grandma got COVID from Chinese people." Vanessa had been to a cemetery only once. It was like a park, but without a playground. Metal and polished stone markers were in the grass with the names of people who were buried underneath. She pictured Oscar standing with his grandfather in front of a marker for Oscar's grandmother. Oscar continued, "My grandpa said that my grandma would be sad and disappointed about what my dad said because she loved all kinds of people. When more Chinese people started shopping at the grocery store she worked at in Montebello, she learned how to say hello, goodbye, and thank you in Chinese. She could say those words in 4 different languages." Vanessa felt sad for Oscar. She thought about how much she loved all of her grandparents and how upset she would be if any of them died. "Then my grandpa told me the same thing that you did, Hilda," Oscar explained. "He said that it was no one's fault that my grandma died. He said that if we're going to get through COVID, we have to help each other, not be mad at each other." "I'm so sad about your grandma dying," Vanessa told Oscar. "I'm sorry for blaming you," Oscar said to Vanessa. Vanessa lifted both of her hands with the thumbs up signal. She saw the thumbs up emoji pop up on Hilda's Zoom image. Right then, Vanessa knew what she would do with the money in the red envelope that had been sitting on her dresser. She would buy Hilda some mine coins to thank her for sticking up for her. And she would invite Oscar to join her and Hilda in their Minecraft server. They could then all build something together. I'm now going to pass the baton to Daniel Kim, a programmer at the Asian American Studies Center, who's going to show you how to navigate through the Vanessa Unmuted storybook.
Thank you, Stan. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Just a moment, please. Okay, I hope everybody can see this. We're currently on the aapstorybooks.org homepage. We'll be taking a brief walkthrough of the interactive platform that we've built for Vanessa's story and cover some of the key features that we believe will enrich the storytelling experience. Okay, the first thing you'll notice is that we arrive on the homepage with a brief introduction to Vanessa's story. And we can start by selecting one of 3 grade levels. Vanessa's story is the same no matter the selection, but any contextual information that is given during the story has been designed to match the appropriate grade level. Let's take a look at it at an example, starting with grades 4 through 5. Okay. You'll notice that we've implemented the story to deliver a seamless and clean reading experience for all of our readers, while really showcasing the images that depict key story elements such as characters, setting, and plot. Skipping ahead a little bit. Okay. You'll notice that we've actually included some words or phrases that are highlighted, which we like to call plot points. Readers will come across various plot points on the website, sprinkled throughout the story, with the option to click on them to review a little bit more information about the topic. Yellow highlights include images, and any green plot points will include videos. And here's one example. Once finished, we can easily resume reading right where we left off. Plot points were designed to be seamlessly integrated to allow readers to focus on the core experience, which is Vanessa's story. Let's jump to the end of the story for another feature. Okay, here you'll find a series of reflection questions that can be used in different ways to help unpack and process what we've learned through Vanessa's journey. Looking at the top navigation menu, everyone will have access to lesson plans, which will give curricula appropriate for every grade level in the form of PDFs. Also ebooks, which contain a story-only version without any of the plot points, a printable PDF version, and last but not least, a Vanessa Unmuted coloring book that parents and teachers can print out and use as a fun activity. Finally, the About section provides information on all of the amazing team members that were involved in making the story possible, along with a link to submit feedback via a Contact Us form. One final point I'd like to make is that the entire platform was designed to work well on all screen sizes to deliver a great reading experience no matter what device you're using. With that, I'd like to introduce Joanne, an undergraduate student researcher who will focus on plot points and how they can enrich the experience for all of our readers.
Hi everyone, so I'm going to share some of the examples of the plot points that we have, and ones that I'm going to be talking about are ones that are related specifically to the Chinese American experience. And so in this high school version, all of the plot points are the same, except for the high school version, they go into a little more detail. And so one of them is towards the beginning of the story when Vanessa is blamed for COVID just because she's Chinese. And if we click on it, it shows up with a whole bunch of graphics and information. And so this one specifically focuses on historical instances of scapegoating of Chinese Americans. And so that paragraph at the top goes into a little bit of the history and specific instances of the scapegoating, demonstrating that it's not a new occurrence with COVID, it's something that's been historically occurring. And underneath that, we have some visuals. And the first one is of Chinese gold miners. And as we can see, this was over 150 years ago. Chinese Americans have a long history in California and America, but that history is often overlooked. So we really wanted to bring it to light in case people had never really heard about it before, because that's not something that's commonly talked about in our history books. And the next photo is of Chinese railroad workers. And similar to the Chinese gold miners, these workers were overworked and underpaid for working essential jobs and doing hard physical labor. And they were severely mistreated, and their work was kind of pushed to the side in light of the work that white people were doing. And in the caption, we can see that they were paid 30 to 50% less than white workers, and they were only paid $26 a month despite working 6 days a week. And these companies hired these Chinese workers really only because they were not able to hire white workers, and the white workers refused to work because of how harsh the conditions were. And eventually, some of these workers went on strike and demanded equal pay and shorter wages. Equal pay and shorter work days, marking the largest labor action in the United States up until that point. And even though their demands weren't met, they proved that they weren't docile workers who wouldn't put up a fight. And so next, we have this political cartoon from 1899, which represents kind of this mass sentiment towards Chinese Americans and showcases the normalization of all of this anti-Asian and anti-Chinese sentiment. And the full caption of the graphic is "The Yellow Terror in all his glory." And it shows how Americans believe that Chinese Americans were basically a danger to America, even though they didn't pose any real threat. And yellow terror is also known as yellow peril. It was a racist metaphor that saw East Asians as a threat to the West, and it was used as a justification for how Chinese Americans and Asian Americans were treated. And finally, we have one more photo for this deep dive. And this cartoon depicts one of the many anti-Chinese riots that happened between 1850 and 1906. And this particular one was in Denver, but they happened nationwide, and they were a product of that anti-Asian and anti-Chinese hate that we saw in the previous slide with the Yellow Terror cartoon. And so that's basically it for this one. And throughout our story, we have a few more of these plot points, and we also have a few videos implemented, and one of them is about Wong Kim Ark. And so for a little bit of background, Wong Kim Ark was born in America to Chinese immigrant parents, and he went to China and was promised that he would be allowed to return to America when he returned. But when he came back, they denied him entrance, saying that he wasn't a citizen. And so in this video, we'll learn a little more about the case and what was ruled.
You have the right to be an American citizen if you were born on U.S. soil, according to the Birthright Citizenship Clause of the U.S. Constitution. The law was fought for by free slaves and ratified after the Civil War, and it's impacted the makeup of our country today.
I am Syrian American. I have citizenship because I was born here.
I am South Asian and Japanese Latin American. I'm the first person in my family to be an American citizen by birth.
I am Pakistani Filipino American. I'm a U.S. citizen, but my parents were not when I was born.
U.S. citizenship is one of the most valuable things I own. I'm the only one in my family who is a U.S. citizen.
To be an American citizen has meant that I have been able to get a job, go to school, to walk through this country with a certain amount of absence of anxiety.
I think of how many times I've had to check U.S. citizen on the same document where I'm filling out my name, Mazhar Sayed Ali. It's hard enough to move through this country, to move through this world with a name like that, with Islamophobia and racism. It's a small saving grace.
Even though it's in the Constitution, birthright citizenship has always been hard-won. Frederick Douglass and Wong Kim Ark were two people who fought for immigrants and their children and the right to become Americans. Frederick Douglass escaped slavery. He then became a powerful voice in the fight for emancipation. He believed the struggle for his own rights as a Black man born in the United States was a fight for equality for all people, and he spoke up for the rights of Chinese immigrants. In the 1890s, Wong Kim Ark was a young cook in San Francisco's Chinatown who was born and raised in the US. The Chinese were the largest group of non-white immigrants at the time, and they were feared as carriers of disease, unfair labor competition, and foreigners degrading the status quo. As a result, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act. It was the first time people were banned from the US because of their race. The Chinese were America's first undocumented immigrants. On his way home from visiting China, Wong Kim Ark was denied entry back into the US because he was Chinese, even though he was born here. So he took his case all the way up to the Supreme Court, and he won because of the birthright clause in the 14th Amendment.
The people who fought for citizenship rights before me were incredibly brave. I know that my life would be completely different if not for them.
Frederick Douglass's vision and Wong Kim Ark's case have been used to secure citizenship to people born in the US, regardless of their race or parents' nationality. But it wasn't until years later that Native Americans and those in American territories got citizenship for being born in the US. To this day, those born in the US territory of American Samoa still aren't granted birthright citizenship, even though they can serve in the US military. So, despite the Constitution, there is clearly still work to be done.
And so that was just one of the examples of a few of the videos we have implemented throughout the story. So we hope that you all take the time and go through and read through the plot points and check out the videos, because I think they're really great information to learn. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Angel, who is our illustrator. sorry, I was muted. Hi everyone, I'm Angel, and I'm so excited to share these illustrations and just talk a little bit about the process. So I did all of these illustrations on Procreate, and this is what they first looked like when I was just starting to sketch them. And if you go to the next part of the slide, then I would outline kind of the initial ones and finalize them in black and white. And these black and white pictures are now available in the coloring book PDF on our website. And then finally, the illustrations would turn out in full color. And yeah, so that was just a little brief show of what the process looked like. Thanks so much.
I'm also excited to share that our team at Koreatown Pico Union Community of Schools instructional team have created standards-based lessons curriculum for grades 4 through 12. So after reading the story, teachers can use any of these lesson plans to actually go deeper and create some activities for students to help them understand and raise awareness of the causes and impacts of these anti-Asian sentiments and how they can be an ally. And also we align to different racism that is occurring in our society, so students will be able to combat that as well. So we're very excited. I just want to acknowledge Jerry, Pam, Stephen, and Raphael, who've been working diligently to support this curriculum. And at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Umemoto.
Thank you, Chie. There's a website here on the screen with educational resources on our translatecovid.org website. We have a translatecovid.org website just to give information about COVID and vaccines and things to people in over 60 languages. So that's might be a nice resource for you as well. But there's an anti-hate tab there where you could get more educational resources. So we'd like to invite you to help distribute Vanessa Unmuted. It's free. And there are social media icons that you can use to the left of the text in the story. And if you feel it's good for your school to use, please encourage your principal, teachers, and counselors to use it. And we hope it gives students a language to understand and talk about what's going on today and to handle situations of harassment like Vanessa experienced in healthy and not harmful ways. We know that students return in the fall, and in some places they'll gather in summer. And so we hope that this helps to kind of tamp down the kinds of sentiments that children might have picked up from their surroundings. Also, we invite you to send us your feedback and comments using the Contact Us link in the About page. We're thinking of turning this into a storybook series. So please feel free to share any ideas you have about where the story can go from here and what issues it can help students deal with. But let me again thank the hard work of the team, Stan Yogi, Angel Trazo, Joanne, Luong, and Chie Byun Kitayama, as well as the behind the scenes web developers, Tom Nguyen and Daniel Kim. And I'd like to open it up to Q&A if you have questions. And I know it takes a while for sometimes people to come up with questions. So let me start with a question to Stan Yogi real quick. I know we're limited on time, so we'll just go through a few questions. And I was wondering if Stan might want to talk a little bit about the process of writing the story, what inspired the ideas, and how it was also a bit of a collaborative process as well. So Stan?
It was not just a bit of a collaborative process, it was really a team effort, which was a joy for me, especially since we created this project in a relatively short time frame, like 6 to 8 weeks. So, basically the process was Karen, Chie, and I had an initial discussion and determined, who the main character would be, the major plot points, the major point of conflict. And then I had the fun project of kind of imagining, who these characters would be, imagining their backstories, imagining the backstories of their parents, and some of that appears in the story. And then because I'm not, you know, a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old, nor do I have a 10 or 11-year-old child or grandchild, I did some research and asked teachers, elementary school teachers, you know, what 10-year-olds are interested in. Also research in terms of like the school year and what, you know, when the holiday was and what kind of signs were used at the protesting anti-Asian hatred march in Koreatown. And then it's just kind of putting it all together in a draft, which the whole team reviewed and helped to improve.
Okay, thank you. I don't see questions in the chat, and I know that we're pressing upon the end time. So maybe now's the time to hand it back over to Andre Spicer. And we just really thank all of you for sticking there with us. And we hope you enjoy Vanessa Unmutes.
And we want to thank you for unmuting, Vanessa. What a wonderful story and what a wonderful relevant way to bring our attention to these topics. Thank you so much, Dr. Umemoto and friends. Thank you, thank you, thank you. What a wonderful story. I know that many of our students are going to benefit from this story, being able to unpack what is learned here. So with that, I want to again thank all of our families and our community members in Local District Central for joining us for the entire series. And I hope that we did all of our cultures justice in validating and affirming them and learning, more importantly. I've learned something today. I've learned something in all 4 parts of the series. And I just want to continue to express how deeply we are committed to stopping any hate wherever we see it, right? No matter what group that it's on, but especially, you know, at this time when we're talking about our Asian American brothers and sisters. Thank you for your contributions, and we do stand with you. With that, I'm going to thank the entire team that has put together these wonderful town halls. They've just been so awesome, and thank you again, Dr. Kitayama, everyone involved. We really appreciate you, and I want to bid you a good night as it is 6 o'clock. Everyone, look forward to our next town halls. We will be starting them again with very important and relevant topics.